Hello everyone, my name is Noah and welcome to this Stet Studio video. Today we're going to be looking at the Drag Queen Oracle and giving it a little bit of a first look and flip through. And while I love the concept of this deck and the art form that is drag, my aesthetic is not really in alignment with this. I don't really have a lot of glitter, I don't have any like boas or anything like that. So in terms of setup today, we just kind of have pink and feminine. It matches some of the colors in the cover of the deck and contrasts nicely with the colors that aren't pink. So if you're not familiar with these videos, it's been a while since I put one out, so some of y'all might be new. I like to kind of go through all of the cards. We'll look at the guidebook, we'll look at the box, all of that, and I will talk about them as a person who's interested in tarot and oracle, less so tarot because this is an oracle deck, but you get the idea. And I will also talk about it as an artist, someone who is an artist, someone who is working on a tarot deck, all of that. And just my perspective as a person who is a part of the queer community and interacts with folks who do drag. I myself do not, so I can't speak to that, but I will give my thoughts elsewise. I don't really do reviews of how well the deck works for me as a reader. I suppose I could do those if there was an interest for that, but usually I like to do my first look, or pretty close to my first look, my first impressions, my first thoughts. So yes, we're gonna start by looking at the box. The box is pretty sturdy. It's thick cardboard. It has a, what do you call this, magnetic like flap. It shuts itself. I don't know. It's been a while since I've purchased a deck that has this kind of closure on it. So it does say the Drag Queen Oracle, 40 cards to help slay on life's runway, and has a design of a drag queen on the cover, and I am guessing this is probably a design from one of the cards. And we have Drag Queen Studio on the side, and it's got this lovely green, and it says it was published by RP Studio. And on the back it says, work each day, embrace your drag queen or king energy with this brilliant and celebratory oracle deck. Set includes 40 illustrated oracle cards channeling your inner drag performer. Guidebook providing the backstory of each oracle card along with a dose of fabulous inspiration. Again, it was published by Running Press. I paid $20 US for it. You can get it for 26 Canadian. And it does say ages 12 and up, which is interesting. I've never seen an age recommendation on a tarot oracle deck. But yeah, it's a very sturdy box. You can see it holds the guidebook and the set of cards in there pretty firmly. And yeah, if you open it up, you can see there's a person kind of that wraps around. And then we have the guidebook, like I said, and then a little sleeve that holds all of the cards. And they are in plastic. It has this lovely design here, which seems to be inspired by the backs of the cards, which we'll take a look at in a minute. The guidebook is sort of slipped in this little cardboard or paper stock band to hold it in there. And this is what it looks like. It says Drag Queen Oracle Guidebook, Steve Fox and Vander Von Odd, illustrated by Cheney Gallarde. And we have this lovely queen on the front and this lovely individual on the back. Two very different vibes. So we open it up and it does say, again, Drag Queen Oracle Guidebook, again, Steve Fox and Vander Von Odd, illustrated by Cheney Gallarde, RP Studio, Philadelphia. And we've got all the legal stuff. Table of contents, we have an introduction, and then it goes through each card and it gives the titles for the card and the page that they're on, which is fun. It makes them easier to find. With a tarot deck, you might say, oh, it is the Major Arcana, it starts on this page, the Suit of Cups starts on this page, and they give each individual card here. And there are some oracle decks that include their own suits, like the Mushroom Oracle, but this one does not seem to. And then it says on page 80 about the creators. So let's look at the introduction first. Drag as an art form is centuries old. Exactly how it's been expressed throughout the decades has evolved drastically, from indigenous traditions to bustling Las Vegas reviews. Drag is not an acronym, a Shakespearean invention, or simply men dressing as women. Humans have been doing drag long before we called it drag. Performers of all genders expressions participate in the art form, invoking the masculine, feminine, and beyond to entertain, advocate, educate, or simply find the biggest stage possible for their eye-catching talents. At the heart of drag is the notion that gender and all forms of bodily self-expression are fluid, ever-evolving, and only as serious as you want them to be. As the status quo pressures people to blend in, drag rejects being pigeonholed. From dive bars to award-winning television shows, local library reading hours to national pride parades, drag artists express themselves while leading the charge for all of us to question our assumptions about identity. The drag archetypes and terms chosen to assemble this deck barely dip a stiletto heel into the depth and variety of modern drag. We address drag performers as royalty for a reason. They have wisdom to offer, and they often do so with biting wit and peerless style. Let them lead your way to a new perspective, and make sure to tip them in return. And then we open up into the cards. So this says 10s across the board, 10s, 10s, 10s across the board. And then it gives the explanation and description of it. And it seems to be, yes, just one page. All right, and then we'll look at them as we go through the cards. And again, on page 80, we have about the creators. Steve Fox is an award-nominated comic and children's book author and the co-creator of Webweaver, Marvel's first gay spider hero. He lives in the Midwest with his partner and their dog. He's been fascinated with drag since childhood, but his ankles are far too weak to survive heels. Vander Von Odd is a trans filmmaker and drag queen who was raised by horror films and Golden Age Hollywood starlets. She currently resides in Los Angeles, where she weaves tales of horror and glamour for stage and screen. She competed on the first season of the Boulet Brothers' Dragula and was crowned the show's first drag supermonster. Cheney Gallarde is a queer artist who was born and raised in Hawaii but now lives in Los Angeles. Cheney's art reimagines drag queens and queer people as modern-day superheroes. So yeah, I definitely do see a bit of comic book style in the cover of the guidebook and the packaging and all of that. So usually I use an X-Acto knife, but I don't know where my X-Acto knife is, so we're going to use these thread snips, which may or may not be accurate to drag and the creation of costumes. So that was just, basic plastic. We've got the cards here. They're pretty big, and the cardstock is really nice. We have a pretty smooth and matte finish, and I like it, although I wonder if it maybe makes the colors feel a little dull, but that might just be. So the very first one we have is 10, 10, 10, 10s across the board, and we have the three hands holding the 10s, and we'll use this as our example. And like I said, I'm not super familiar with drag. Some of them I may have more thoughts about just because of my knowledge, but I really do like that this guidebook includes more information for people who are not super in the know beyond appreciating it from afar, like myself. So like I said, we have 10s across the board. In ballroom culture, judges award points for each category, from face to hands performance to bizarre, the ballroom term for outside-the-box performances. Usually this means holding up big scorecards written with larger-than-life numbers, a performer who earns 10s across the board, and has won over the hard-to-please judges. As with many ballroom sayings, 10s across the board has been picked up beyond the community to mean anyone living their best life and impressing the judges, real or metaphorical. When this card is drawn, embody that perfect score. Whether you're being judged by the world or you're your own harshest critic, strut your stuff like the trophy is within reach. That was a really hard sentence to say. First, I almost said shut up instead of strut your stuff, and then trophy came out tofi like tofu. So we're struggling here today. I really do like the sort of vintage aesthetic. It does remind me a bit of the 70s with the color palette. Again, it feels maybe a little dull, but I think that as we get into the deck, I will get more used to the color palette and be less picky about it. I like this. It kind of reminds me of maybe the 10 of coins or the 10 of cups in tarot, just kind of that like everything's maybe not perfect, but everything's great sort of thing. Then we have the activist protect trans kids, and you can see there's a crowd in the background, and you've got the rainbow-esque skirt and a sign that says protect trans kids. And I think that this is really important because there is a lot of crossover between drag and the trans community, particularly in the 60s and 70s United States. That is where I live. I live in the US, so I'm most familiar with that history. And it was a sort of, not necessarily a gateway of expression, but an avenue for expression for a lot of people who may have, a lot of people who did decide later on that they wanted to live as the gender they were portraying through drag. And you can still portray the gender you are in drag. For example, a woman can be a drag queen, or a man could be a drag king, rather than a cis man having to be a drag queen. Anyways, so, I think this really calls back to a lot of the roots of the American sort of gay rights and trans rights movements in the 60s and the 70s, and I really like that. Then we have avant-garde, which is very abstract, something very maybe beyond what we think of as typical drag, or what you think of when you think of maybe RuPaul's Drag Race or any other mainstream drag performance. There can be a lot more to it than that. And then we have The Ball. That outfit kind of reminds me of Carmen Sandiego. Let's pick this up and read this one. The Ball. The category is, the heart of ballroom culture is the ball, a raucous celebratory pageant come party at which houses gather to compete and socialize or kiki with one another. The ball is made up of dozens of categories broken down by gender expression or OTA, open to all. Some are focused on visual presentation like Femme Queen Face, which rewards femme presenting trans women with the most flawless facial beauty. Others are pure performance like New Wave Vogue, where performers display their utmost flexibility and arm control. Whatever the category, the ball is an opportunity for queer people, particularly Black and Latina people, to gather in celebration of their queerness and the unique spaces and art form they've carved out. When this card is drawn, look toward your chosen family and community for affirmation and celebration. And if the space for that doesn't exist yet, reflect on how you can create it. I really like that. I thought that was very interesting because I understand what ballroom culture and balls are, but I didn't know how this would turn into a card. So I like that that's really cool that not only do they describe the history and the background of it, but also how they're interpreting that as a card, because I think this deck would probably be maybe a little lacking without one or the other, and I'm really glad that it has both. Then we have the Bearded Beauty, and this is the person on the cover. I'll shave my eyebrows, but the beard stays. For decades, a premium was placed on feminine realness within the world of drag queens. Unless a gal was an out-and-out comedy act using her appearance for laughs, the idea of presenting a full mug of makeup without shaving your facial hair was often frowned upon. In recent years, however, queens like Lucy Stoole and Blackberry have proven that beards and glam aren't mutually exclusive. The Bearded Beauty rejects traditional expectations and incorporates her scruff into her drag, showcasing that there's no one way to look like a stunning queen. When this card is drawn, think about what parts of yourself you shave away to fit in, and if life wouldn't be more beautiful if you kept them. That's really cool. I like that a lot. Then we have the Body, and this is very much sort of referencing the birth of Venus. We have the compact and the sort of stage look of all of it, and they're throwing flowers, and the person is very sort of feminine presenting. They have an hourglass figure, they have the makeup, the long hair, their legs appear shaved, and then they have top surgery scars. So it's a really fun sort of blending of the feminine and the trans masculine and all of that. And I try not to read every single card description when I go through these because I feel like that's not fair to the creators just to share all of that on the internet. That feels a little bit kind of like piracy to me, so we're not going to do that, but I will say that I think I will enjoy this deck even more once I am able to just read through the guidebook for every single card. And then we have Burlesque, which is very pretty. I love the lines of movement and the sort of glittery bits hanging off of her and the spotlight behind her that also looks like the moon. That is so gorgeous, and the just pow of the colors. And I am definitely starting to really like this color palette. I know I said before it felt a little dull, but I think it works. I think it really works, and it definitely goes with that sort of vintage comic book aesthetic. And then for this one, we have the Butch Queen, which was the person who was on the sort of wraparound part of the box, and I think we'll look this one up and read this one as well. This one is the Butch Queen. In ballroom parlance, the Butch Queen is a cisgender queer man who may be walking in a male-presenting category, or if he's up in pumps, walking in femme-presenting drag. Unlike the drag pageants that came before them, ballroom opened up categories for all variety of gender expressions, including where the Butch Queen walks in the garb of hypermasculine archetypes to present realness to the judges. For feminine or flamboyant gay men, wearing masculine male clothing is its own form of drag. Just don't mistake the Butch Queen for butches. That's a whole different category. When this card is drawn, consider the drag you wear every day without giving it much conscious thought. How do you present yourself to others, and does it feel authentic to your true self? Then we have Camp. Oh, I love this one so much, with the crayon hat and the ruler sleeves and that sort of that look. And I want these tights, these leggings. I want this whole outfit. It looks like so much fun. We have the children. This comes from the concept of there being drag mothers, house mothers, and the younger people underneath them, or the people with less experience, were called their children. So yes, that's the children. And I think that perhaps this card, without looking in the guidebook, is probably about who your guides are and who you have guided, would be my guess. And then we have the Club Kid. I really like this one. I think we're going to look it up. I love the colors, the rainbow platform boots, all of that. Here we go. And I am noticing it looks like these are in alphabetical order, which is nice. The Club Kid, we're all going to become superstars. In the 1980s and 90s, New York City saw an influx of young people who wanted to wear outrageous outfits, party all night, cause a scene, and get famous while doing it. Typified by personalities like Amanda Lepore, Lady Bunny, Richie Rich, and James St. James, the Club Kid threw art, fashion, drag, and provocative behavior into a blender, producing a scene that changed nightlife and launched careers. Their obscene avant-garde fashion continues to inspire, and today, the Club Kid is a moniker bestowed on artists whose drag has absolutely nothing to do with realness and everything to do with making a moment, however impractical and outrageous it may be. When this card is drawn, do something outrageous. Paint your face and dance the night away. Wear your wildest outfit to run an errand. Take the mundane and make it extravagant. I'm definitely getting impracticality and extravagance and just energy from this card. I like that. We have the Comedian. There is a lot of comedy involved in drag and a lot of perceived comedy of the idea of a man in a dress, that sort of thing. That is not so great because it's not really respectful, but there's also a lot of other comedy that is created as part of the entertainment of a drag performance. We have the Crowning. That is a lot of hair. I like that. I love the sort of composition of this, me being a little more artistic about it, talking about it more so through that lens. I love all of the hair and how this card is framed, and just the focus on the crown rather than making it about the person who's putting the crown on or the person who's wearing the crown. In this moment, that could be anybody's crown or almost anybody's crown. I really like the way that this card is designed. And we have the Dancer. And dancing is also a lot of what goes on in drag. Obviously, there's balls, ballroom, all of that, and suggests dancing. We got Disabled Royalty. I like that a lot. Let me see. That's the Disability Pride flag. Let's see what we've got in here. Dancer, Disabled Royalty. They rhinestoned their wheelchair. Just as drag knows no limits on gender expression, so too is the art form of drag open to performances of all abilities. Disabled royalty are also some of the least represented members of the drag family, but their impact is everywhere, from accessibility activism to awareness campaigns to simply putting on a damn good show. Some disabilities are invisible, while other performers may have mobility aids that they incorporate into their art. Disabled royalty prove that drag isn't just available to everybody, but to every body. When this card is drawn, reject the limits you've set yourself and those you've set on others. There is so much beauty to share and to experience, and you may just be missing out. Interesting. I feel like that maybe kind of teeters on the line of like fetishization, or like being like, you can do it, doesn't matter what your disability is. But I think that leaves enough room open to interpretation that it doesn't have to be taken that way. And we have the Diva. I love that dress and the movement and the dress and the hat and the feather and the fan. Oh, that's just lovely. We have the Doll. I love how she smashed out of the dollhouse. That kind of gives her that, yes, she is very feminine. She's very much leaning into those feminine, like, not stereotypes, but the expected gender presentation of a feminine person. But she's not weak. This is empowering for her. She's not being forced to do this. And this is where the phrase protect the dolls comes from. We have the Drag King. Oh my god, I love him so much. I love his face and his suit. I don't know, there's something about him. I want to see him perform. He makes me happy. So yes, the Drag Queen is the sort of, not opposite to drag queens, because I I abhor a binary, but it is the drag presentation of masculinity. That sort of over exaggeration and performance. Yeah, the performance of masculinity, the exaggeration of it. But it can also be a really good way to connect. I feel like this card in particular could be a good way to connect with what healthy masculinity looks like to you and be able to reconnect with that, because I know that's something a lot of people, regardless of their gender, regardless of their sex assigned at birth, have a hard time connecting with. So I feel like that could be what this card connects with for maybe for me and for others. We have fashion. We have first time in drags. Oh, I love that. We love a beginner. We love someone who is just starting their journey so much. We have genderqueer. I love that. Let's see what it says about genderqueer, because that is something I identify as. It's not either or. While much of mainstream society thinks of gender in binary terms, what was I just saying? Man or woman, the spectrum of gender expression is much more expansive than just one or the other. And for genderqueer individuals, gender is not constrained to existing categories. As for genderqueer drag artists, some of whom have taken the term drag thing, their drag isn't about performing traditional ideals of masculinity or femininity, but blurring the lines of what is or can be. Genderqueer artists buck the binary to explore all possible expressions of the drag art form. When this card is down, think beyond binary possibilities. Blend and blur the options in front of you until something feels right, feels you. Oh, I love that. I love that so much, but I am a non-binary individual. So maybe I'm being a little basic. We have the host. I love that face. It feels so cartoony. It really hits that sort of expectation, the, again, not stereotype, but that, like, this is what I think of when I think of how cartoon faces are drawn. Archetype, that's the word I guess I'm looking for. I love it. And we have the impersonator. This is another pretty popular drag subcategory, I suppose. People doing impersonations of other people. Pretty historically significant. We have the legend. Beautiful. The lip sync. Again, another very popular part of drag performances. I love the sort of retro modern, mid-century modern looking style of this card. I feel like it really hits an era, and I like it a lot. We have the monster. Ooh, I like that. Very, very cool. Let's see what they say about the monster. The mother. Here we go. Boo, did I scare you? The monster creeps through the shadows of drag artistry, embracing the macabre and forbidden. The realm of horror has always attracted queer sensibilities, particularly via the monster, who is shunned from society, feared by those who seek to wipe out its deviance. From the sapphic vampire of Carmilla to Anne Rice's homoerotic Lestat and Louis, tales of terror have long found a special resonance among queer people. Through their drag, the monster seizes on their fighting outcast status, celebrating their own monstrousness, and occasionally terrifying the small-minded in the process. When this card is down, howl at the moon, laugh at the obscene, and cast off the shackles of what it means to be normal in a constrained society. The very things that make you monstrous also make you fearsome and awe-inspiring. That's fun. And this color palette is just great as well. It's so impactful. And we have the mother, which would be the head of the house, or a more experienced, older drag performer who looks after the younger ones in the group, in the house, or just people, you know, younger queer trans folks in her life. Takes on that role. And we have the Park and Bark. This is another one where the color palette is just so perfect for this picture. I really, really like what they did with color in this. And we have the Performer. Reminds me of Tiana's friend from Princess and the Frog. I don't remember what her name is. We have the Punk. This is the one that's on the back of the guidebook. Let's see what this says. Drag will never be mainstream. Drag has always been an underground art form defined and celebrated by LGBTQIA+ people, many of whom feel like misfits even within queer communities. The punk embodies this by challenging the harmful institutions that limit the full potential of our communities, serving up that rebellion with a screw you mentality and a side of gritty glamour. The punk isn't just metal spikes and sneered lips, they're a middle finger raised to systems of oppression, capturing the outlaw spirit of drag. When this card is drawn, don't be afraid to buck expectations. Be a little confrontational and do it your own way. It's not about being perfect, it's about being free. Fun, 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 fun. I like that. I like the energy. I love those lightning bolts as well. And we have reading, which is where the phrase reading for filth comes from. I know that's a phrase I've heard a lot. This is the sort of quick-witted, insulting banter that is passed around in this community that is a normal form of communication. It's kind of like a little humbling, you know, it doesn't go too far, but yeah, I think that this is a fun way to portray it, because I don't really know how you could portray that unless you showed maybe two people standing there kind of not really arguing, but it's probably what it would look like, would be arguing. So having the book with the flames and the glasses and all of that is a really fun way to portray that very effectively, even if it's not literally what it means. And we have realness. I can read this one. She's serving executive realness, darling. Realness is a form of passing, blending in with a community that may be worlds away from your own. In ballroom, categories include executive realness, where performers, many of whom may come from low-income backgrounds, dress in their finest corporate CEO drag. Realness can be a safety mechanism for transgender people, or a means to explore and play with identities beyond your personal experience. When this card is drawn, serve an aspect beyond your lived experience. If you're a shy person, step outside of yourself and wear outsized confidence for a day. If you're the life of the party, try on the role of the quiet observer for a night. Play with identity and perspective and how it makes you feel. I love that. That's really, really fun. Kind of a way to get out of your own head and maybe fake it till you make it a little bit. We have the reveal, which is very much the inspiration for the back of the card, I think. And it was maybe the inside of the deck box. Not 100% sure. I think that's what it was. That's really, really great. And that is something that usually happens partway through a drag performance, is the reveal. And this also reminds me of, it's a callback to the crown was on this sort of hairstyle. So yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. And we have the runway. I like how this card kind of depicts life and the world as a runway, because there are the camera flashes like you would see on a runway itself, but also she is out in the world. The world is her runway. I like that a lot. We have shade. Interesting. I like that. This is another card where I really like how they depicted shade. Let's read the description here. Ooh, that lip color is so pretty. I barely noticed your stubble. Shade is a subtle insult, a barb that draws blood before you realize that you've been nicked. Shade can be playful when traded between friends, or positively vicious when deployed against an enemy. Often, shade has an element of plausible deniability. You may say, well, isn't that dress nice? But the tone suggests you think it's anything but. Black queer communities, including the ballroom scene, popularized throwing shade, a term that has become mainstream in recent years. But make no mistake, just because you know what shade means doesn't mean you can always clock when someone is throwing shade at you. When this card is drawn, consider if the person or situation bothering you is worth your time and energy. Often the shadiest response you can give is a simple smile and a compliment, followed by a prompt exit. Let me tell you, as a neurodivergent individual, it is very hard for me to understand both reading and shade as a concept, because neither mean what is being said. For example, with shade, it's, oh, you sound nice, but you're being mean. And then with reading, it's, oh, you sound mean, but this is something fun between friends. And that, like, even if I logically understand that, like, right now we're talking about these things and I understand that, not so much in the moment all the time, it's hard for me. So that's funny. I think these cards might have that sort of extra lens for me, extra flavor when they come up in the reading. That sort of, do you understand what's going on here? How are you interpreting this? How is it meant to be interpreted? And where is that gap? And what does that mean? I also really like with the guidebook, they mention in both of those descriptions that both reading and shade come from communities of color, specifically Black and brown communities. And as these terms become more mainstream and more folks start using them, obviously I am a white individual and I know what these terms mean. I have heard them. I have used them occasionally. It's nice to know where they're coming from and honor that and be respectful of that, especially since there is a lot of racism still within the queer community and the drag community, and that needs to be addressed and changed. I also like with this card that it's another really great example of a sort of non-literal context where she's holding up the umbrella for her and it looks so nice, and so, you know, like, that's nice of her. She's holding up the umbrella, but it's got holes in it, so she's still getting wet. I feel like that's a really good example of what it is, and you can't necessarily show that literally. And then we have the tip, and that one's pretty obvious. Tip your artists, ladies and gentlemen. We deserve to, you know, eat and all of that. I love the color story of this card. I love the framing of the hands. It's very ace-coded in my mind, like the aces in tarot, not the sexuality. Also, it reminds me a bit of the Michelangelo painting where God and Adam are reaching towards each other. So yeah. And then we have the Tranimal, and I have no idea what this means, just gonna come straight out and say it, so we're gonna look it up in the book. This experience is telling me that I know both more about drag than I thought I did and less about drag than I thought I did. So we have the Tranimal. Unleash the Tranimal in you. While many subcultures and movements within drag have contested origins, we know with certainty that the Tranimal was born from the mind of artist Jer Bear Jones in the early 2000s. The goal of the term was to deconstruct existing notions of drag and embrace surrealism, street urchin style, and an animalistic devil-may-care attitude. The Tranimal subverts our understanding of gender, makeup, fashion, and presentation, tapping into something less structured and more primal. When this card is drawn, it's time to toss out the rulebook. Forget everything you thought you knew about your approach to the situation and come at it at an unexpected, unrestrained, and wild new angle. Define your own terms and adhere to no one's expectations but your own. I like that. I like that a lot. And I like how they're presenting it with this, where it's sort of a collage of bringing different elements together. And we have Trans Femme. Beautiful. And then we have Trans Mask. Again, beautiful, handsome, amazing. I will admit the hair in the background is kind of giving me the mental image of truffula trees from the Lorax, and I don't think I'm going to be able to unsee that now, but it's okay. And then we have Vogue Royalty. And since I think that, yes, this is the last card, let's go in and read this one just for fun. Strike a pose. A movement within ballroom culture emerged in 1960s New York City as a response to racism in the drag pageant circuit. Black and Latina drag performers created their own extravagant, raucous forms of pageantry, opening its arms to transgender women and male-presenting participants. From ballroom came Vogue, a highly stylized dance form that mimics the striking of poses, like those seen in fashion editorials. While Vogue has penetrated the mainstream, helped along by a certain pop star's 1990 hit song, true Vogue royalty have mastered the elements of ballroom and embraced the community from which it was born. When this card is drawn, focus on the fundamentals. Find your category and work to perfect it. Don't shy away from trying something new, but remember to build a sturdy foundation and rely on those around you for support and strength. Awesome. I very much like this deck. I think 40 cards is a great amount. I know some people might feel like that's a little bit skimpy for an Oracle deck, but I think it's a good amount. I feel like you get a good variety of cards and themes and archetypes in here, and you get a really good explanation of each card, and I feel like that is a lot of work to do for more cards. I do know I saw my camera battery is flashing that it's about to die, so we're going to finish this up quickly. I like to finish off these videos by pulling a card and just seeing what the first pull of this deck is. And we get The Activist. How perfect is that? And I don't think we read that one the first time through, so let's flip to that real quick. That's the second one. The first Pride was a riot. Many consider the art of drag inherently political, a challenge to systems obsessed with fitting people into neat, tidy boxes. But there are some for whom drag is an avenue for more direct political action, such as the charitable group the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, whether via keeping the spirit of riotous protest alive at Pride parades or by running for elected office in full drag. The activist seizes the platform of drag to advocate for meaningful causes and shake the system from the inside out. When this card is drawn, speak truth to power. When you're advocating for yourself, a friend, your community, or complete strangers, align yourself with a worthy cause. Stand your ground when your intentions are just. All right, so that is the first card. The sun is going down, my battery is dying, and let's finish this up real quick. So yeah, I really like this deck. I think it's fun. I think it's a good price for what it is. And I think the cardstock's nice, which is always nice. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's been a long time since I put out a video, but I really wanted to share this with y'all. I've been busy. You can follow me on Blue Sky and Instagram, and obviously here on YouTube you can subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment, tell me what you think of this deck. What do you know about drag? What do you want me to know? Did I get something wrong in one of my understandings? Who's your favorite drag performer? I'd love to do some more learning. And so yes, I think that's about everything. Like I said, be sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment, whatever you'd like to do, all that fun stuff. Yes, I mostly do videos about tarot on this channel right now. Occasionally there's some art, occasionally there's some other fun stuff. But yeah, this channel is pretty chill right now. Be sure to check out any of my other tarot videos if you are interested in seeing what other decks I've given a look through. And I'd also love to know if you'd like to see an updated tarot deck tour video or two, because I did one a few years ago. But my collection is different now, so I think that could be fun. That's one last thing you could let me know about in the comments, perhaps. But I think that's everything, so I hope that you are having a great day. Bye!